or if I poop my pants or something weird.
Well, luckily we can't see your pants. So if you put a mask on during this thing, I'm going to be like, oh, I know what happened. Everybody, welcome to Bootsy Greencast, the podcast that is named after my name that's not really my name. I'm very happy to be with my good friend Scott Colin, joining me all the way from Vancouver, British Columbia. Scott is an artist, an entrepreneur. He is a woodworking artist. He draws, he does prints, painting, all kinds of stuff. As you can see, is that Bill Clinton behind you? Who's that? Who's that guy wearing my hat? I
don't know, but he's got your hat on.
I love it. It's beautiful. Little paper mache man back there. Scott and I have
He's actually
before.
wood. He's carved out of wood.
Awesome. Cool. It's kind of hard to tell. But that's even cooler. I don't think I could even come close to that with paper mache. So, but you build ships as well, boats. You work on boats. And I've shared a few of your prints for sure on Instagram. I'll do more of that as well. But you also have been studying self-development.
Yes.
For 7 years, you've got a great story, amazing story.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that with me. And Scott's been on a lot of other podcasts talking about that. We could just for now say that it's very intense and dramatic, like me. I'm just learning how dramatic I am. It's kind of funny. Someone made the observation that I was dramatic, and then I freaked out, and I started saying I'm not, and then I realized, wow, what a dramatic reaction to being told. I'm a dramatic person. So I'm learning to sit with it and I don't know, start to enjoy and appreciate it. Really, it's, in comedy especially, is about hyperbole and exaggeration and those types of things. But, also try to stay grounded, but self-aware. But thank you so much for coming to chat with me. I really appreciate it.
Totally. 100%. Yeah. So happy to be here.
It's amazing. And we were talking a little bit about, in the pre-interview, just maybe talking a little bit about, finding our maximum potential. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that. Some tools that people can use, some of the things that you've personally implemented in your life that you've turned me on to. Because when we first started talking, Scott sent me a bunch of books and resources. And all that stuff is really interesting and helpful. And I really appreciate that. We can talk a little bit about that stuff and, just how people can begin to really find themselves. A lot of us who are doing this work, this great work, it's really about self-actualization. It's about understanding and embodying our most authentic selves, whatever that is. And there's no wrong way to be. It's just a matter of embodying and expressing exactly who we are, right? So, so I think you've done a lot of work in this field over the past several years, and an amazing story, like I said, coming from a place where you were pretty lost, and you've a significant amount of time and helped a lot of other people too, which I think is beautiful. And that's really, I think, a big part of why we do what we do, is to share, with other people. So.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, the first thing that comes to mind here, and you share that, is just that we each have our own unique way of awakening into the world. And for me personally, that journey has come through a lot of pain. And so for me, that journey happened through drug addiction. through heroin addiction. And so essentially, when I did completely collapse from that and clean up, I became deeply interested in like what is the meaning to life? How does life work? Why am I here? And so I ended up having a spiritual experience in the midst of that completely turned my life around. And it happened through psychedelics. It happened through an ayahuasca experience. And essentially, that experience turned my life 180 degrees. And my new obsession, I mean, I'm a creative person by nature. I'm, like you say, I'm an artist, I'm a woodworker, I'm a musician. And essentially what I did was I turned all of my creativity inward. And I to really look at like, how does life work? And so that became my obsession essentially 5 years ago and that's when I started reading books. I started, watching YouTube videos. I just was like an open-minded, what can I learn? And through that experience, I realized that each of us has our own story and our own way that we can teach other people. And it can happen through our own life experience. So, so for me, that's what's brought me here.
Yeah. And I want to mention something from the Kabbalion. It talks about, talks a lot about balance, talks a lot about swinging, but it also talks about rising, and it says that you will fall first before you rise. And so the equidistance is there. However far down you go, you're going to go that far up. So that's kind of where you are. After hitting that sort of crescendo, then, you've turned your life around in a way to where you've started asking questions and coming from, I think, probably a more humble place, and trying to learn and absorb everything that's possible. So I think that it's really, hopefully for people out there, encouraging to know that however much pain and trauma you've experienced, that you can come from there and you can elevate a tremendous amount from there.
Right. Yeah. So one thing that comes to mind hearing you say that is when you're in that space of that pain and that trauma, it's nearly impossible to realize and experience what life can be like. Like the way that I explain it to people that are going through hard times, or maybe that are stuck in addiction or some kind of painful experience, is that the pain won't make you improve. Like it will give you temporary inspiration to make a change, but it won't motivate you to keep going towards the solution. What will actually keep you in the solution is when you experience the benefits behind becoming a healthier, more whole human being. And the more that your mind changes, like the way that I operated 7 years ago when I was still in addiction to now, it's like my mind, I've done so much work in that time, that the way that my mind operates is completely different. The way that I perceive things, my beliefs, the feelings I have on a daily basis, they've changed so much that it's like I'm a completely different human being. And essentially, I think that we all have that potential, and I think it's really hard to see when you're in it, because you don't know anything beyond your experience. You don't know anything beyond your current frame of perception.
Right.
So it's really hard to see what's outside of that boundary.
That's really inspiring too. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. I feel like a completely different person too, not to get biblical, but there's a verse in the Bible that says, the goodness of God is what leads man to repentance. thought a lot about that
Right.
recently.
Okay.
You know, just in my interpersonal relationships, especially as dealing with myself, I don't need any help, obviously, beating myself up. None of us do. We're really, really good at it. Everyone's their own, you
Yeah.
know, worst critic always. So
100%. Yeah.
I can totally relate to your change in relating to yourself. And as far as like finding an exemplary, you know, version of ourselves, or really influencing our lives in a positive way, it doesn't come from kicking ourselves and beating ourselves up. I think there are moments when we get that flash of, oh shit, you know, like I've got to make a change, and that is helpful. That's a good intrinsic motivator to start with, but ultimately coming at ourselves with self-compassion and love, and
Completely.
allowing ourselves to continue to move forward and to continue to fail is really, really
Yes.
important. And
Yes.
in developing that and the self-talk that goes along with it is
Yes. Yes.
something that can be really, really helpful.
Yeah. So, yeah, what that makes me think of, you know, I told you, I mentioned earlier before the interview started, I'm doing this course on removing childhood trauma at the subconscious level. And the parts that I'm on right now is self-love. So what we do is we start out, each week we have sort of a different assignment. And I, I believe we use is it David Hawkins' map of consciousness?
Yeah.
I think I sent you, yeah. So we use that as sort of a basic model of, we start at the bottom with shame, guilt, uh, fear. We move through all these different emotions, and we you know, do like meditations, like hypnosis type meditations, and essentially cutting these energetic ties to certain people in our lives where we've gotten these emotions from. And we move through all these different emotions, and then we go all the way up to self-love. And essentially, I've realized I've done a lot of work in these past 5 years with dealing with things like guilt and shame and some of the more negative emotions. But the one area that I've really been lacking is actually self-love, and really having compassion for myself and patience for myself. Because if I really look at the years that I spent in addiction, I think that there was like that was what was missing in me, was the self-love. And so I'm actually doing an exercise every night before I go to bed, that's called the mirror work. And I don't know if you've ever heard of work like this. So it's really hard at first. It's really hard to do, but essentially, it's good to do this before bed, because what we do before we go to sleep, we carry into our subconscious mind into the whole night of sleeping. So you stand in front of the mirror, close, and you look at yourself in the eyes, and you acknowledge yourself. You say your name, and you know, say it a number of times to really just acknowledge yourself. And then you say 5 times something that you're proud of yourself for. You can pick something for the day that you've done that you're proud of, something that you've achieved in your life. And then you go on to talking about something that you can improve. I forgive myself for, and you say it 5 times. I forgive myself. And then you say something you commit to improving in your life, and you say that 5 times. And the whole time you're staring, you're looking at your eyes. And it's really awkward when you first start doing this. And it really shows you how much like self-criticism that we have towards ourselves. And one thing I'm noticing is the more that I do this, I can actually see the difference, because really what the object is, we need to rewire our subconscious mind. And because we have all these behaviors, these thoughts that are in the background, that are really running the show. So when our conscious mind, when we suddenly come to the conclusion, wow, I am a beautiful person, and I know that logically, like I know there's things to love about myself, but if there's things happening from childhood that are saying, like, no, you're broken and you're flawed, and you're worthless for X, Y, and Z, that basically creates the dynamic where we move through life. And so this mirror work is having a tremendous impact. I notice myself, I'll be like in bed, I'll wake up, in that half awake, half asleep state, that dreamy state, and I'll have like feelings inside myself of like, wow, I'm a beautiful person, I'm a good man, and I know it's because of this mirror work that I'm doing. So
it's really interesting. Yeah, it's kind of giving me some acid flashbacks right now. Staring in the mirror, look at my face melting off.
Yeah,
like,
right.
You're beautiful, but I can't tell if you're you or not. But
yeah,
but no, it is hard. It is hard to give ourselves credit. I have a really hard time with that. And it's not something that I try. And I know part of the reason probably why I haven't tried it yet is because there's a lot of resistance there. We need to remember that, having that self-compassion and that love. It's really interesting to think about the childhood trauma stuff. A lot of Robert Anton Wilson's work in imprinting, and the first, like, especially for, I guess he calls them circuits of consciousness in his work. A lot of those imprints are there, developed in childhood, and a lot of times in memories that we might not even be able to recall, which is interesting. Yeah. So I love that you're working with that, and I think that's really helpful and interesting. Really, really, really cool course to take. I would be very curious to know more about it.
Yeah. I can connect you with Joseph P. Gabby is the man who I'm doing this work with, and he's a numerologist. He's a master numerologist, and that's so we do our numerology. He does your numerology chart, and that gives you like a basic blueprint of who you are. And I'm blown away with numerology at this point. Like he does a form of numerology called blueprint numerology, and it's not like kind of what we were talking earlier before the interview about personality types. It's not just saying, well, this is who you are, sorry, good luck.
Right.
It's more like looking at your blueprint, and what that does is exposes areas of your life that need to be transformed, or certain patterns that are happening in your life that are not healthy for you. And the idea is to use that as a blueprint for transformation. And so he doesn't need to know anything about you. He just needs to have your full name and your birth date. He does all your the letters in your name have numerological equivalents. And then he puts it all together, and then for an hour and a half or so basically tells you all about you, and can talk about all your childhood stuff, all the different periods of your life, and your jaw will just drop the whole time, because it's like, how did you know that? How did you know that? And it's I mean, you could go in circles with that. Like, what is reality? It's probably all numbers when it comes down to it in the end. And like, it makes sense that I guess it's another form of mysticism. Like, there's all these different ways that we can peer into our wiring, and so numerology is one of them. So anyhow, it's really fascinating. So we find out our basic blueprint, and then you have that as like, this is who I'm meant to become in the world, and these are the things, because we each have a special gift, a special way that we're meant to live in the world essentially. And that's the thing I love about numerology, is that it really exposes that. And then the Enneagram is another amazing tool for that as well. Is like, just looking at the unique way that each of us is wired, and that I don't need to go off of what my parents expected of me or what the world expects of me, because each one of us is unique and has a special gift that we're able to give to the world.
And that's beautiful. I completely agree. I do think each one of us has a special gift, at least one, and maybe many more. And I think a lot of these tools are really helpful. I'd love to talk about the Enneagram a little bit, as well as, personality tests, astrology, palm reading.
Right.
There's just a ton of different tools that we have at our disposal that we can use. Tarot, and a lot. A lot of people who are maybe new coming in might be a little bit overwhelmed with some of this stuff, might be also maybe a little bit, I don't know, taken down a bit of a rabbit hole this way or that way. I mean, whatever. It's your walk, but I do want to say that no matter like what your personality type is, no matter what's cool about the Enneagram, which I do want to get back to. I just wanted to make a quick point and just say that you're not limited by any of these tools. These tools are there to help you understand yourself and hopefully to transcend yourself, right? So maybe we could talk a little bit about the Enneagram really quickly, if you'd be so kind.
I'll try to book through it as quick as I can, because that's a whole rabbit hole that we could spend days in.
I'll try to link that video that you sent me by Beatrice Chestnut, who wrote the book on the Enneagram.
Yeah,
it's pretty exhaustive, and it's also one of the books that you sent me. I'll link that in the show notes. Just make a note about that.
Totally, yeah. So speaking of Beatrice Chestnut, as far as the Enneagram goes, I've read many books on the Enneagram now, and to me, she is like I call her the queen matriarch of the Enneagram, because I really, really believe in her and the way that she does the Enneagram. And rather than explain the reasons why, I think there's a lot of really important reasons why I think that she's worth paying attention to. But her book, The Complete Enneagram, is really it's kind of like the master Bible of the Enneagram, I feel, at this point. And so the Enneagram, as quickly as possible, okay, it was brought to the West by Gurdjieff originally in the earlier 20th century, so the earlier 1900s. And it was an esoteric system at that point of like I think it probably, I don't know a lot about Gurdjieff's original system of the Enneagram, but what I will say is it was Claudio Naranjo in the 1970s and Oscar Ichazo that further developed the system into psychology, he integrated what we would call enneatypes. So the modern system that we call the Enneagram now is really as a result, it's a result of Gurdjieff and mostly Claudio Naranjo and Oscar Ichazo. And so Claudio Naranjo was a South American psychologist and a spiritual seeker. He's an amazing teacher worth looking more into. And so basically the Enneagram, there's a diagram, it's in a circle. Kind of wish I had the diagram here so I could point things out, but regardless, there are 9 basic personality types. And within those personality types, there are 3 versions of each type. So without going into too much description of each type, there are 3 types that predominantly use the heart, the intelligence of the heart. There are 3 types that predominantly use the intelligence of the mind. And there are 3 types that predominantly use the intelligence of the body. And what happens when you discover your type, amazing. Super, there's the diagram. Wow.
I'm trying to use technology to help us here explain.
Wow, sharp, man. You are sharp. So, looking at that diagram, 8, 9, and 1, those are the body types, also known as the anger triad. 2, 3, and 4, those those are the heart types. They use the emotions predominantly. And then 5, 6, and 7, those are the head types. So it's like almost like each of these types overuse that that form of intelligence. So I'm a type 7, and so I'm a head type. So I overuse my thinking. And so part of one of the huge benefits of the Enneagram is that kind of, we were talking about this before the interview even. Critics of the Enneagram will say that it just puts you in a box, and it says, like, this is the way you are. You're just patterns. You're just, a number. But that's not the, once you really get to know the Enneagram more, what you realize is that it shows you the box that you're already in. It shows you the patterns that you are stuck in. And it freakishly accurately exposed patterns to the point where it's like, how did this person get in my head? How do they know that I'm like this? And one of the great things about this is that it shows you the motivations behind these behaviors. So it's not just like, these are your traits, kind of like the Myers-Briggs, like this is the way that you look in the world. It's more showing you what your motivations are behind these behaviors. And that can be very uncomfortable, because what it essentially does is it exposes your shadow. And so this is one reason why the Enneagram is so immensely helpful, is that it exposes your shadow. And that's why it can be quite hard for people. It can be hard. Sometimes when people learn their Enneagram type and they really study it, and like really like study the transformation side of the Enneagram, like not just looking, like there are certain varieties of the Enneagram. Why I really advocate, one of the reasons why I advocate Beatrice Chestnut is because you can get the McDonald's version, or you can go to like the master teacher who's really showing you how to use it as a map for transformation. And it doesn't necessarily show you specific methods for transformation, but it's a map, and maps are really valuable to see where you're at, and there can be like almost like it can show you the unhealthy aspects of your personality type, and it can show you what your specific personality type is the optimum way to grow towards. And so it is probably the most valuable tool that I have found since my awakening. I've been studying it for close to 5 years now, and my fascination has only grown since I learned about it, because what I've realized is that you can keep going with it and keep going with it and keep going with it. Now, like a lot of these maps, you don't necessarily need it if you want to transform. We have a lot of different maps, and there's many different valuable systems, and it's really about finding what works for us specifically. But so I kind of feel like you don't need the Enneagram to transform, but it's kind of like at the same time, it's kind of a huge shortcut. It's like, awesome. Especially if you work with clients, or like if you're like a counselor or a therapist of some sort, if you understand the system of the Enneagram, you'll be able to immediately get to the core of like what your client or what the person you're trying to help, you'll understand exactly what they're all about. So it helps you understand yourself. It's like a really powerful tool of self-observation, but it's also a really powerful tool and being able to understand others. So when you understand your own Enneagram type, then you'll start to see people around you. And you have to be actually very, very careful of this, because you need, like, when you first discover the Enneagram, you can kind of get excited about it, because then you'll start to see the patterns around you, and you'll be like, whoa, Donald Trump is like a type, is he a type 8? So-and-so is a type 3. You'll start to like have all these realizations, and then you'll be able to like immediately see the motivations behind their behavior, and who they are. You'll be able to see who they are, but at the same time, you need to be very cautious and not push it on people, and also come to realize that some of these, because there are 3 versions of each type, that means that there's actually 27 types in total, and some of those types can mimic other types, and we can think that we have our head wrapped around someone else and think like, aha, they're just being a type 4. But the particular subtype that they are of the type 4 might mimic another type. So we just can't immediately think that we have someone figured out and that we just understand. We don't want to turn it into a tool to judge people.
Right.
We want to like carry some humility with it. And also when it comes around to teaching people, I think it's really important to already have laid down a good foundation of experience of your own life experience. And I think having some sort of like a spiritual type practice and experience is probably like really helpful to have along with the Enneagram, because the Enneagram isn't just like a psychology tool. The way I see the Enneagram is it's a combination of a spiritual tool as well as a psychological tool. And because being a typical type 7, actually I love looking at things from multiple perspectives. So it's one of the things that type 7s do, is like, I love variety. I love doing lots of different things. And so with self-development, it's like, how many angles could I look at this from? I want to look at it from the view of a scientist under a microscope. I also want to look at it from the perspective of Vadim Zayland with reality transurfing.
Yeah.
I want to look at it from many different angles and not just get stuck in one like
Totally
corner.
Right. Right. Absolutely. No, because again, these are tools and they're maps. And as Alan Watts famously said, that the menu is not the meal, the map is not the territory. And so these are ways for us to figure out insight to ourselves. But look at Buddha. He didn't need anything. He just sat under a tree.
Right.
These are ways for us to
He was a type 5, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Which makes a lot of sense. If you read about the type 5, you'll understand Buddha.
Cool.
Sorry.
That's neat. No, that's great. No, noted. But like the personality test or astrology or palm reading, what's cool about the Enneagram that you noted was that it's really designed to, and Gurdjieff said, I think if you understand the Enneagram, it like renders libraries useless or something like that. Like that's a pretty profound statement.
Exactly.
But really finding the things in ourselves, I like you used the motivation analogy, like actually checking into our own motivations. And that really is like the gateway to like working with that shadow and the subconscious stuff and the imprinting and all of that. That can be a really good way to grow and to really point some things out to ourselves. And I think it's a really good point also to not take information and just project it onto other people or try to, feel like you understand. I mean, I think we all deal with that whenever we start to see the world in a different way. Like maybe like 7 or 8 years ago when I first got into any of this stuff, I was like, oh my God, like I do see at that time, I thought, I see a broader perspective of the world than I did before. And very easy to project onto other people that they don't notice what I notice, or that I'm somehow more in tune or some bullshit lie that I could easily poison myself with. So pride always goes before a fall. So just to note that.
Yes. Yeah, completely. Yeah. And there's like, that's actually a part of the journey. Like everyone goes through that,
Mm-hmm.
and there are stages of development. And it's like the further that you go on this journey, the more that you'll be able to, one of the ways that you'll be able to help other people is that you will be able to see exactly where they're at because you were already there at one point. And so the further that you go, the more that you, the idea is to have a sense of humility, to realize that the more that we learn, that we have like there's like a, what's the right description, like a right word, we have something that we really owe, um, and that's to like a, it's just important to realize that we're using very powerful tools, and that we need to carry with it a deep sense of reverence and a deep sense of humility.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and there's a number of tools that
Yeah.
we can use to get insight to ourselves and the world around us. And it's going to be different for everybody, you know, and these I think can be integrated, they overlap, you know, there's you know, I've actually I shot a series with a friend named Katie Bowles, and she has been studying like Vedic astrology and palm reading and tarot and all this stuff. And so we went through and she kind of like did some readings for me just to kind of like demonstrate and I was like the guinea pig, which felt really good because I was like, I love, everybody loves having some attention, you know? And it was really insightful and helpful. And even what was funny about it, I think it was when she was reading my palm, she was like, oh, you're going to have the opportunity to basically like caretake some things for your family. And if you, it'll be really good for you if you take that on and, you know, basically like accumulate this historical sort of family data. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm not a keeper of things. I don't like a lot of clutter. I have sentimentality toward few objects. But then yesterday, I'm going through with my dad, taking all the stuff out of his basement so that they could get a new floor laid down there. And so doing that, we found all these old pictures, all these old home movies and tapes. Yeah. Wow. So I'm going to take all that and take it and get digitized. So I'm like, damn, man, she was spot on. It's something that I was like, eye rolling. I'm like, yeah, whatever, you know, basically.
Yeah.
And then 3 days later, what was it? And then all of a sudden I had the opportunity to do those things. I know the resource of some people that could help us to take those things and put them into digital format, which is really cool. And then, you know, yeah. So that's additional insight too, like our childhood experiences and you know, memories and things like that is definitely insightful.
Right.
But yeah, there's just so many tools. I really like I like the Myers-Briggs thing a lot as well.
Yeah. The Myers-Briggs is great. I mean, it has its roots in Carl Jung. So Carl Jung is like, there's a lot going on there. It's worth exploring.
Yeah, definitely. There's like a website, I think it's 16 personalities or something like that.
.com,
you can take like a free personality test. And that helped me a lot.
Yeah.
I learned that I was a mediator personality, which makes a lot of sense to me. I love working with other people.
Totally.
And all that. So it's pretty cool. And that's a really valuable tool. But again, like, you know, I guess I just want to kind of put out there to anybody who's looking into this stuff, like, don't let it put you in a box, like you were saying about the Enneagram, that it's really to get you out of your own sort of rut, your own, you know, your own cage. You know, we all have resistance, you know, and it takes, you know, I hate the word discipline. I like to instead use the idea that I'm outsmarting myself in some way. That's how I that's how I convince myself that discipline's cool. Because like it just has such a connotation, probably for me from childhood, like, well, you need discipline, you know, and it's like, it just makes me think of military school, you know, And so I'm like, I
right.
don't want to go down that road. However, I will outsmart myself, like Bugs Bunny or some shit, right? And then,
Yes,
put myself in a position to win, like by setting things up
right,
a certain way, which takes discipline and forethought and those types of
right.
things. But it just seems like an ugly word to me for some reason.
Yeah, no, and I could see that for some people that word could be really ugly, and I've actually been reminded of that. For me, it's not, and for me personally, it's actually part of my numerology. My numerology, my life path is 32-5, and essentially that is like one of the themes uh, of what will actually bring me into my highest potential is freedom through discipline. And that's a term I almost want to get that tattooed on me, because I really need to have discipline in my life. And not the military form of discipline, but I have this thing, that I call shiny object syndrome. So it's like getting distracted by shiny objects, by anything fun or enticing. I get distracted. And so it's really important for me to have discipline in my life, and especially coming out of addiction. It's like, holy moly, like I basically dug these huge trenches in my mind of taking the easy way and taking the fun way. And so the only way to get out of that is to actually establish like healthy forms of discipline to really form good habits. So, but that word can mean different things for different people. From people who've been oppressed by fundamentalist forms of religion to very stern parents. So yeah. Anyhow.
Yeah. Pardon my getting triggered by.
Yeah, just hearing that word, you're like,
I'm gonna get dramatic. I'm about to get dramatic.
Yeah. Every time I say discipline, you're like, your nervous system is like rattling.
But no, it's so important. I need to do the same thing. I too have taken the fun route a lot. I'm sure that's not a surprise to anyone, but it's just it's appealing, and I try to also try to do it in a way that is beneficial. I think there's ways to take the fun route in a sort of more responsible way, which is another word that I don't love either. Responsibility.
Yeah. Right.
It's very important to loyalty is a form of responsibility, right? And that's not a word that particularly triggers me. In fact, it's a high value to me. So whatever. They're just words. I shouldn't.
Right. But with responsibility, it's all a balance too. Like, it's like, it's not saying we need to be rigid and we need to, be uptight about things. But it is important to understand that we do have a responsibility in the world to, look at the state of the world, it's really important for us to have a sense of responsibility of how we need to give back in our own unique way. And that, that unique way is for us to really decide, and but also to learn how to relax and have fun at the same time. So it's not about being rigid and uptight. It's really important to have as much fun as we can in this whatever experience that we're having in this human condition.
Yeah, no, that's a really good distinction to make. That's really, really, really good. I like that a lot. We are responsible here. What are we bringing into the world? And that's something that I've tripped and fell a few times, where I just I get overwhelmed or emotional, and I just start I could fall into a more negative sort of mental state. And I have to remember that I am still learning myself. I wouldn't consider myself fully actualized or something like that, but that I know the gift that I'm here to give is to bring joy to people. So for me to get on and start ranting about something that I saw on C-SPAN is not my gift. There are people who are, good at delivering news and things like that, but I have to remember That's not me. I'm not good at that. So I need to like distance myself from that. And that goes back again to, we were talking a little bit earlier too, in the pre-interview, of insulating ourselves a little bit from media, social media, basically being very intentional about what thoughts we allow into our minds, and also thinking about where these thoughts are coming from, right? Like what pendulum
Totally.
is swinging that I'm hooked
Yeah.
onto and I don't even know it.
Right. Yes.
You know,
100%.
I've done that a lot. And I've thought a lot about, like, you know, like I said earlier, I even avoid comedians, even ones that I like, and their hot takes, just because it's like, it's influencing me subconsciously, right? And so if
Totally.
I can isolate myself from those types of things, then it actually enriches my experience and my ability to describe my experience, because now I'm not
Totally.
filtering it through someone else's filter.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, completely. And it's a hard balance, because, like, you know, I can't remember if that was before the interview started or not, but just talking about Twitter and about how toxic um, it can be. And so where's that line between, you know, wanting to communicate with people and share what you have to share, but then what you're taking in? Um, yeah, yeah. So I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Instagram now, and I got on Facebook for the first time in my life more recently, um, which has been a trip.
Yeah.
And it's been a trip.
Yeah, that's
It's
funny.
been a
Yeah,
real trip.
we can. That was definitely before the interview, because like I was like early stages of this pandemic. I'm like waking up in the morning, and the first thing I'm doing is going on Twitter, and then, you know, the protests start and all this news. It's incredibly toxic. So I still will post
Yeah.
on Twitter and like just throw out stupid jokes or whatever, but like I also have basically stopped scrolling on that platform altogether. I'm not on Facebook almost ever. I feel like it can
Yeah.
get toxic. It just kind of
Yeah.
depends on what you're paying attention to. Obviously, there are groups that are maybe more positive and things like that on there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, Instagram seems to be a little bit better, you know. But again,
Yeah.
when we're scrolling through all that stuff, it's important to keep in mind that you're going to be affected by stuff that you don't necessarily double tap and like. It is seeping into our subconscious minds,
Yes,
whether we
completely.
like it or not, you know?
Yeah. And it's affecting us in ways that we just don't even know. We don't understand exactly.
Exactly. So, you know, avoiding anything
Yeah.
that's toxic, and really, I think it's really important to really just check in with ourselves. Like, what is this thought that I'm having, and where is it from? Is it
Yeah.
really,
Right.
you know, what is the source of it? And I guess Buddha like talked about that a little bit, talking about how someone asked him where thoughts came from. And I think his
Mm.
response was something along the lines of, you're looking for where an arrow came from instead of getting it out of you, right? So he was saying it doesn't matter where the thought comes from. It matters that you're entertaining it, or that it's inside of you and you're like running a little bit of an operate,
Right.
or, you know, software update with that particular thought.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I guess that, you know, like, where does it come from? There, everything is thought, but
Yeah.
but yeah, like keeping in mind those. I've talked a fair bit, like especially on Patreon, about like trying to keep the darkness out, you know, like insulating
Yeah.
from the dark, from like, when I say darkness, I don't mean in the polarity way where like creativity is involved and we're playing with the poles, you know. I mean like just
Mm-hmm.
straight up negative, you know, garbage stuff that's just like garbage in, you know,
Yeah.
that particular
Yeah.
stuff, like anything that deflates our sense of purpose, deflates our sense of joy or helping or ways to assist other people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
just that stuff, just, you know, just I'm trying to avoid that particularly. But, but yeah, I think it's as part of like this and living like an exemplary life. our best version of
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. That's definitely a solid tool too, is just like being very conscious of what you're consuming and what's in front of you, all the time.
Yeah.
Not to be like a tyrant about it, and like not like you can't watch like your favorite cartoon or something. Like it's fine. And like in Vadim's work specifically, he talks about how he makes a huge distinction between watching something fictional and watching something that is based on reality.
Yeah, right.
And how we can begin to vibrate at that frequency, whatever that current event is. The more we get swept up on it, the more likely that we're going to basically be sucked into that, or it's going to affect our lives in some way or manner.
Right. I remember the second podcast interview that you had on your podcast. I don't know his name, but he's I guess the Middle Eastern ambassador of reality transurfing.
Salah
I remember
Al-Rashid, was his name.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if
I remember him talking about
yeah.
movies and about Vadim meeting him.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I think it was mostly because he just hates America. Vadim does it. He's like,
Fair enough.
He tried to take him to a theater. He's like, no, death to America.
No.
That's funny. I mean, I guess if you were raised in, communist Russia,
Yeah,
you're probably not going to love America so much.
Yeah,
you might believe like that we were responsible for Chernobyl or something, and like just hate us. You'd like to think to have a higher perspective than that, but I mean, we're all affected, like we were talking about in the beginning of this, by subconscious patterns and ideas and beliefs that we have little to no control of.
Yeah, right. So I'm wondering, something that I would love to talk about as briefly as possible is the work of Ken Wilber. Do you know anything about Ken Wilber?
I have heard the name, but I'm not placing it.
So it's kind of like, I guess you could, put it in that group of things like the Enneagram. It's another map, another way of looking at life, where you are on the map. But he came up with an idea called integral theory. And I actually, there's also a man named John Dupuy who took Ken Wilber's theory and modeled it towards recovery for people in addiction to come into balance. So anyways, with Ken Wilber, just real briefly, just, hearing us talk about how to keep away toxic, negative things, and how to hey, there we go. Wow, man, you're amazing.
Hold on.
So we have 4 areas of life that we need to continually work at to have balance in our lives. We have the physical, we have the spiritual, we have the mental, and we have the emotional. So when we work on all 4 of these areas, then that's what will bring us into balance. So the physical, that means working on our diet, having a healthy diet, sleep hygiene, exercise, having physical practices. Really important to have. Having a spiritual practice, and that's up to you to decide, what is your spiritual practice, but really having that as an active part of your daily routine. And then going into the mental area. So with the mental, learning new things, even like doing puzzles, problem solving, actively learning things on a daily basis. And then the last being the emotional quadrant. So, and actually the Enneagram is a great tool for the emotional quadrant, by the way. And that is processing our emotions, learning about trauma, like really understanding our emotions and really processing them. So when we work on all 4 of these areas, it essentially brings us to balance. And it's not difficult to look at the world and to see why it's out of balance. Like how many people are working on these 4 areas of life? it's not it's not hard to see once you look around far enough. You'll have, and so that would mean that if people are essentially doing a bypass in some form or another, whether doing a spiritual bypass, or you could be doing even a physical bypass to where you're not working on the other areas, but you're exercising, you're doing, you're like a fitness junkie, or like a fitness instructor, but you're not working on your emotions, and you're not processing your trauma. Essentially, whatever you're suffering from, whether it's like a mental and dysfunction of some sort, imbalance, some mental illness, addiction being included into that, work on all four of these areas, and it'll make you a healthy person.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good. Yeah, with all this stuff, we learn about one thing, or this is, I'll just say my experience. I'm sure other people deal with this, but me in particular, I find out about one thing and I'm like, that's it. That's the thing now.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah. And then you run off into that land, and you discover this thing, and it's cool. But that's just one thing. And there's a lot of things to consider. And these are all, again, tools for us to use to get that gnosis of ourself, that self-actualization, understand exactly what our gift is, bring that into the world. And, it's not necessarily one thing. You might have a specialty, you might have one thing that you prefer, but I think it's good to not limit yourself, not allow yourself to be put into a box. I've done it, it's like, oh, well, I'm a Cancer, so I don't even know, whatever random trait. I'm just lazy, so I'm just going to lay here and be lazy because that's a trait of mine, says the internet. It's like, well, I just shot myself in the foot, because I believe this, narrative that, something on some algorithm presented to me, and it may or may not be true, or it may be true, but I also might need to be able to conquer that particular shortcoming.
Exactly.
And I think
or there could be some kind of confirmation bias or something. There's a number of different things that could be happening there.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's important to remember that we are, in charge of our reality. We ultimately do choose. So just accepting something that someone says or something says, and that's one thing I love so much about Robert Anton Wilson. He's like, I don't believe anything, but I have my suspicions, and that's how he rolled, He's
good.
He's like, accept one thought, or, what I think Aristotle's attributed to saying this, but I don't think he actually did. It was the mark of an educated mind is to be able to accept two thoughts at once, or something like that.
Yes. So if I could mention real quick, there's an amazing book that I call one of my Bibles. There's a few books that I carry with me that are real, that I'll read over and over again. So, A Mastery, written by Robert Greene, is a brilliant book, and he describes something very similar that you're talking about. And I think it's John Keats, and maybe John Keats was a poet or an author. I don't know for sure. But he came up with a concept which he called negative capability. And it's a little bit different than it sounds. But what he describes as negative capability is, it is a trait that every master possesses. Any master in their field possesses this trait. And what it is the ability to be in any given situation and not have your mind completely made up, being open to possibilities essentially coming out of any direction, completely out of left field, and totally changing your worldview or the way that you feel about something, even if it's illogical or irrational, just being completely open-minded. And if you really look at, people throughout history, if you looked at Leonardo da Vinci, you looked at Einstein, they came up with ideas that completely revolutionized the way that we understood reality. The only way they were able to do that was to be completely open-minded to things far out of the norm.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I think that goes right hand in hand too with Robert Anton Wilson, where, he's like, that's his idea is what's called maybe logic. And so it's basically the same exact idea, is that he's like, fuck you,
Yeah.
Aristotle, like two thoughts at the same time. He's like, let's do 40. He's like, where's the nitrous tank of thinking? He's not going to hit that. I love those 60s guys, they were so open-minded.
Oh, yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, it's true.
But basically, yeah, he's like, maybe logic. He's like, yeah, it could be that. It could also be this. It could be this thing here. It could be also this.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
whenever we make up our mind about something, we really do close it. It's like constricting, it's like that reality tunnel, like he talks about, and it just gets smaller and smaller. And so, if I can think a few years back and talking about my awareness expanding and that time, understanding and seeing, where I was and what a small view that I had before I started to get into any of this type of thinking. It just goes to show you, and that's also going to reflect into your reality too. And you'll miss things, opportunities, etc., because, your view is shrunken, so like, I guess the idea is to, open it up, expand it, allow it, and maybe not get too hung up on any one thing. And I say that and then I'll also contradict myself, because I'm real good at that, and say that it is really good to start with something and actually learn that tool too. So like for the Enneagram, you've been studying for 5 years, for me, it was my first thing that I really stuck to was the Self-Reliance essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I was like, man, it's so good. And the whole point of that is like, he's like, if my genius calls me, I'll write on the doorpost whim. He's like, I'll shun mother, I'll shun brother, it's basically, the idea is that if I have an idea inside of me and it's coming from me and I know that it is, I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, that is mine. And it's, that's how genius expresses itself. So that's what he talked about. And then of course, I'm transurfing for about 3 years. And then, I kind of weaned off that. And then I'm kind of going back into that again and reading through those ideas again, because it's a really cool interpretation of natural law. It goes hand in hand with the Kybalion and several of those. And the Kybalion was another one of those books for me that was very fundamental in my development. I was like, oh, okay, well, this is, here's 7 natural laws, and these principles are constantly upheld. Like, you can't break a law. You can break rules, but not laws. And nature has set these ideas in motion, and she does not contradict herself. So, while I say, check out all these tools and blah, 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 I don't, I also think it's good and helpful to have sort of something fundamental and whatever's helpful for you. Like for me, it was Self-Reliance. When I was working on the tree farm, I would just listen to that book over and over and over again. And it's beautifully written. He's so brilliant, like the way he describes stuff is like, and it also is kind of like an older English, so some of it's a little bit, it's not like how we talk now. So I think it takes maybe sometimes a few times to kind of go through it and understand what he's even talking about. But like, once you have a grip on that, you're just like, man, this is so good. And it would bring me to tears. I'll get to the end of that book 2 or 3 times a week, and I would still get choked up because it's so so well written and so beautiful. But yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in there too for everybody to just completely take everything that we've talked about this entire time about taking all these different tools and using them, and throw that out the window as well. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to anybody.
Well, it's making me think about even coming back around to, what you were mentioning about all these different, esoteric methods, like whether it's palm reading or astrology or and how when we get interested in some of these esoteric tools, like the importance of using some of these tools. But then this is one reason why I love Ken Wilber's integral theory, is because, and all these different tools, is I can constantly, like I was mentioning earlier, cross-reference. How does it look from this angle? How does it look from that angle? to make up my own mind of what's going on with reality. But I did want to share real quick with palm reading. I have a palm reader who I see once a year, and she's an elderly woman that lives in North Vancouver, and it's like going to visit your grandma. She doesn't advertise. She just has this gift that runs in her family. Her mother was a palm reader, and when I first went and had my palm read by her, it was one of the initial things that just blew me out of the water. That I was astounded at the accuracy and how she didn't know anything about me besides my first name. And at the beginning of the reading, she asked me my age, and that was it. And it's absolutely mind blowing. And I don't know if you know about hand analysis. Have you heard of hand analysis?
I've like the other part of your hand, like not just the palm, but
no,
okay.
Hand analysis is basically the hand analysts wanted to get some legitimate respect for like the world of palmistry, and they tried to look at they did look at the like the science behind what's happening with palm reading, and to actually document and look at the patterns of hands. And so it's not so much looking at your future, it's looking at what is actually, that there is a blueprint on our hand, and that you can very accurately read someone's blueprint based on the prints on their hand. So that's kind of looking at palmistry through a scientific angle and saying, no, there's something here. This isn't just some like woo-woo staring into a crystal ball, talking to spirits thing. And I think I want to bring this up because when you first get interested in these worlds, or if you're looking at it from the outside, being very judgmental, you don't always understand how people are doing what they're doing. And also because there are many charlatans. There are people who are not real or don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, and people follow them, and it kind of gives the new age world a bad rap, and I have a lot of feelings about the new age world and the new age movement, and it's very conflicted because I think that there are a lot of things there that are worth exploring, but at the same time there is a lot of I guess you could say even bypassing going on, maybe spiritual bypass going on. And so it's so important when you start to get involved in some of these like esoteric methods. Again, you could even use Ken Wilber's model as a method walking through this. Like, what are the other areas of life I need to be working at, and am I bypassing? Am I not dealing with my own trauma?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of I'm going to use some like foghorn leghorn words here: chicanery, even douchebaggery in the new age movement. And a lot of people who are just trying to make a buck, and you first get in and you're like, oh, of course, yeah, everybody's got a sincere intent, because look what they're doing, they're working on self-help. But it's unfortunately not that way. And honestly, like, one of the easiest places to probably take advantage of people, because people are so naive and willing to have an open mind and perspective. So it's important to be,
when they want help.
Yeah, they need help. We all need help. We're all here to help each other. That's why I'm like anti-guru. Like, I have friends who help me, and like you, I've learned so much from you, but you've taken stuff from me and vice versa. It's a give and take, you know, and this
Yeah.
thing, and it's beautiful that way, you know. It's not like, you know, I wish I could place the name of this documentary I saw. There was like this documentary I saw a few years ago where this dude pretended to be a guru. He was like an Indian looking guy, but he was like some dude from like South Carolina or something, but he pretended to be this like guru, and people like totally like bought into him and all that stuff. And at the end, he did a reveal where he was like, look, guys, I'm just a regular guy. I don't talk like that. I don't have an Indian accent.
Wow.
Like, I don't do any of that stuff.
Wow.
People were really, really mad.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But what a great lesson to teach people.
Yeah.
Like a powerful, not comfortable, but.
Right. Yeah. Very powerful. And also, you know, pretty interesting. You know, I can't find it. Oh no, Kumare. Kumare is what it's called. It came out in 2011. It's a documentary about a man who impersonates a guru. Yeah. So I saw that a few years ago, and I was like, man, I was pretty blown away.
Wow.
By that.
Wow.
Since I've just learned this new screen sharing thing, I'm gonna put it up.
Man, that's cool. I love the screen sharing.
Yeah,
wow,
look at me.
Yeah,
I'm like learning new stuff, and like I need to do that. You know, I really want to try to push.
Man, you're working on the mental quadrant, quadrant of cannabis.
Yeah, I absolutely have been. That's exactly true. I actually I'm taking a course right now, and it's called Autonomy, and it's Richard Grove, who did a lot of work at Tragedy and Hope, and his first video I think came out in 2011 that I saw, and it's called What You've Been Missing. And basically the point of that movie is you're an idiot, and that's not an easy thing to hear, but I needed it really, really bad. But since then they've come super far along way, and what the idea of autonomy is to basically like to teach you to find yourself, your skills, and market those, and basically be, you know, like an entrepreneur, like, and take whatever those skills are and what your gifts are, wrap those up, and take the, you know, the discipline, that it takes to actually do those things. And there's really interesting things that I've learned out of that course already. Like a lot of things that are really interesting. One thing that he talked about was in the last lecture was that it's not that we don't have the energy or the motivation or the drive to do the things that we want to do, but we often just get sidetracked and we put that energy into the wrong thing. It's like often we'll think we need to do all the social media stuff, or we need to do this, we need to do that. It's like, no, you just need to get a client. You know, it's the same amount of energy expenditure, but we avoid doing the things that we know we really need to do in favor of the things we think we need to do. And so it's actually, you know, as far as like the energy expenditure, it's the same. It's not a lack of willpower. It's not a lack of motivation. It's just picking the right things to do. So me working on the mental stuff and like trying to add that, as well as maybe like a little bit of flavor to what I'm doing, maybe make my content a little bit more accessible to people or something like that, might help, you know, to get the message out a little bit more, and doing those types of things, as well as, you know, there are some pretty interesting tools that I've discovered as a part of that class also. So really, really good.
So real quick, there one something I want to add to that, or affirm that, is sometimes we can get stuck in the echo chamber of our own mind, is how I describe it, and we need to have outside influence and outside perspective, because, you know, we don't understand things that are beyond our perception, and we can get stuck in that echo chamber. And so I think, you know, it was Einstein has some famous quote by saying you can't fix a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it, something like that at least. So that's why it's so important to have some sort of community or dialogue, or have a teacher of some sort, or mentor, or you know, people that can help us to see outside of our own mind.
Yeah, and we can do that for each other, and that's beautiful. And like that's really what it's all about. You know, we don't want to be following Kumare around. We should be hanging out with whatever his real name is, you know, like on a Friday night, just kicking it by the fire or whatever, and just riffing it up. But no, I really appreciate and admire you for that. You've been a great blessing and gift to me, and I really appreciate all the things that you're doing. I know you're giving a lot. You're creative. You're doing everything you can to be the most exemplary version of yourself, and it's inspiring, and I appreciate it. And I want to thank you for coming on and talking to me. Before we do go, what's the best way for folks to find you?
Yes. Okay. So I'm on social media, Scotty Colin. So SCOTTY COLIN. If you do a search on that, I live in Vancouver, for just to kind of narrow your search. So I'm on Instagram, and my handle on Instagram is Scotsmanship, as in like, so that's my that's my Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, Scotty Colin in Vancouver, and don't be afraid to send me a direct message if you're like wanting a resource, or I don't know, want to connect in some way. I'm definitely interested in having dialogue with people who are fellow seekers.
Awesome. So at Scotsmanship on Instagram, Scotty Colin, Facebook. I'll of course put those resources in the show notes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
and also Tumblr. I'm on Tumblr, Scotsmanship.
That's right.
Tumblr is another platform that I'm on.
Yep, that's cool. You can see a lot of Scott's work on Tumblr, and it's awesome. That was how I was introduced to you first. I don't think you had your social media quite up and running yet once we first started talking, but you sent me a message on Patreon, and I just like bawled my eyes out. And since then, it's just been a super romantic love affair. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it, But I really appreciate you. I'll also send the exact same message out to people too. I don't know. Hopefully, I don't seem inapproachable or anything. But if you reach out to me, I answer back. I also like try to comment back anytime anybody comments on any of my stuff. So if you want to connect with me too, same thing. I'm at Bootsy Greenwood.
Yeah.
And please check out Scott and his work at Scotsmanship on Instagram, Scotty Colin on Facebook, and Scotsmanship on Tumblr. And I'll put all those links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Scott. I love you. You're amazing.
I love you too. I love you too. Thank you, Owen.
It's my
Thank
pleasure,
you.
Man. Thank you.
Yeah. Right.
All right.